For nearly 2,000 years, they lay buried in silence, sealed in clay jars, hidden in desert caves as if the earth itself was guarding a secret too powerful to reveal. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were finally discovered, they didn't just rewrite history, they threatened to unravel it. Within these fragile fragments were forbidden prophecies, mystical calendars, and teachings some claimed were whispered by angels themselves. But why were they hidden? And what truths were so dangerous that powerful forces tried to keep them buried forever? Tonight, we step beyond the veil and into one of the greatest spiritual mysteries ever uncovered. What you're about to hear may challenge everything you thought you knew about faith, history, and the forgotten power hidden within you. What if the truths you were never meant to know have been buried for over 2,000 years, sealed in caves by hands that feared their power? In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd stumbled upon a hidden cave near Qumran. Inside, beneath layers of dust and silence, lay fragile scrolls untouched by time, scriptures older than the Bible, cloaked in mystery and stained with the ink of forbidden knowledge. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, a cache of ancient manuscripts that would shake the foundation of spiritual history, yet remain shrouded in secrecy, censorship, and scholarly resistance. But why? Why would texts of such historical and spiritual magnitude remain partially withheld from the public for decades? What revelations did they contain that made even religious institutions uneasy? Were these simply forgotten writings of a Jewish sect, or were they veiled blueprints of human divinity, cosmic cycles, and long-lost spiritual technology? You are not here by accident. The veil is lifting. Tonight, we descend beyond the surface of dusty academia and sanctioned doctrine. We will explore the enigmatic authorship of the scrolls, the cryptic prophecies hidden within, and the possibility that these texts reveal a version of human history far more divine, and far more dangerous, than what we've been taught. From the arcane rituals of the Essenes to revelations about angels, messiahs, and the war between light and darkness, we will peel back the layers of manipulation and uncover truths that echo across dimensions. We will enter the minds of ancient mystics who wrote not to preserve religion, but to ignite transformation. Prepare yourself, not just to be informed, but to be activated. Because once these secrets touch your soul, you will never see the world the same way again. Long before the hum of electricity or the printing press etched words into permanence, there were scrolls, parchments that held not just language, but frequency. And deep in the Judean desert, among the dry and whispering cliffs near the Dead Sea, a secretive group known as the Essenes lived apart from the world, devoted to the sacred. They believed the world had lost its way, that the spiritual teachings once offered to humanity had been corrupted, fragmented, or hidden. The Dead Sea Scrolls were their response. These manuscripts, composed between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, are not just ancient writings. They are portals, linking the consciousness of a forgotten age with our own. Found in 11 caves near the ruins of Qumran, the scrolls include fragments of every Old Testament book except Esther, as well as apocryphal texts, communal rules, esoteric teachings, and prophetic visions. But the true power of the scrolls lies in what was not included in the canonized Bible, and what that exclusion reveals. To understand their deeper significance, we must understand the Essenes, not merely as a Jewish sect, but as spiritual revolutionaries. They believed in a dualistic cosmology, that light and darkness were locked in eternal struggle, not just in the outer world, but within the soul. They practiced purification rituals, lived in disciplined silence, and awaited not one, but two messianic figures, a priestly Messiah and a warrior king. This alone disrupts centuries of Christian theology. But even more startling are their references to angelic realms, coded celestial calendars, and an apocalyptic war that echoes eerily with the Book of Revelation. The Dead Sea Scrolls hint at something the modern world has forgotten, a time when spiritual understanding was deeply practical, when divine wisdom was not just worshipped but embodied. These were not the passive followers of a religion. The authors of the scrolls were seekers of transformation, mapping inner ascension with a precision that resonates more with Eastern mysticism or Hermetic alchemy than with Western dogma. Why, then, were these teachings hidden? Because within them lies a radical idea that the divine spark is not monopolized by priests, temples, or churches. It is within you. This idea is both liberating and threatening. It dissolves hierarchies. It empowers the individual. And so, across history, powerful institutions, religious, political, and academic, have chosen silence over revelation. For decades after their discovery, access to the scrolls was tightly controlled by a small circle of scholars. Portions remained unpublished until the 1990s, fueling whispers of a cover-up. What was so dangerous, so destabilizing, that it had to be withheld? The answer lies not in the parchment, but in the power behind it. These texts suggest that humanity's spiritual lineage is older, deeper, and more complex than our mainstream narratives allow. That there have always been those who remembered the ancient truths, and those who worked to erase them. This is not just about history. It's about memory, collective memory, being rewritten. And now, like a tide returning after 2 millennia, the scrolls are whispering again. Beneath the brittle surface of the Dead Sea Scrolls lies a tapestry of truths so profound, they seem to stretch across time itself. These are not merely theological footnotes, they are fragments of a deeper, older spiritual science. To read them is to unlock echoes of a civilization that understood the soul not as a religious symbol, but as a multidimensional force embedded in the fabric of reality. Let us begin with the scroll known as the War Scroll, a cryptic manuscript that outlines a coming battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. On the surface, it reads like apocalyptic prophecy, filled with vivid descriptions of angelic warfare and divine intervention. But look deeper, and the metaphors shift. The battlefield becomes internal. The enemies are no longer external nations, but the unseen forces within: fear, ego, ignorance. The Essenes were not calling for a literal war, they were invoking the ancient struggle between spirit and flesh, between the true self and the shadow it casts in the material world. The War Scroll offers more than warning, it offers a blueprint. A coded initiation. In it, we see the emergence of sacred time, a belief that certain celestial alignments and ritual rhythms could thin the veil between worlds. The Essenes lived by a calendar different from the one used by the temple in Jerusalem. Their solar-based system wasn't just a way to track days, it was a method to sync with the cosmos. Each phase of the moon, each solstice or equinox, held significance. Rituals were not performed out of tradition, but in harmony with cosmic currents. This idea, that time itself holds spiritual frequency, is a key tenet of ancient esotericism found in traditions from the Mayans to the Druids. Another scroll, the Community Rule, lays out a strict, almost monastic code of conduct. But what's intriguing is not the discipline itself, but the intent behind it. The Essenes believed that to receive higher knowledge, the vessel, meaning the body and mind, had to be purified. The rules weren't about control, they were about alignment. Much like the alchemists of later centuries, they understood that inner transformation was a prerequisite for divine revelation. They fasted not out of guilt, but to sharpen intuition. They avoided excess not from fear of sin, but to amplify clarity. They were cultivating themselves as instruments for receiving hidden truths. And then there are the angelic texts, mystical fragments that speak of heavenly beings not as distant deities, but as ever-present forces, watchers, and guides. One particularly mysterious figure appears again and again, Melchizedek. Referred to in the Bible only briefly, Melchizedek in the scrolls is depicted not as a mere priest, but as an exalted being, a divine intermediary tasked with the judgment of souls and the unfolding of an ultimate redemption. His presence in the Dead Sea Scrolls blurs the lines between Judaism, Christianity, and Gnosticism. Was he an angel? A Messiah? A symbol of the higher self? The texts leave it ambiguous, as if inviting the reader to engage not just intellectually, but intuitively. In many of the scrolls, we also encounter the repeated use of coded language, pseudonyms for historical figures, cryptic references to the teacher of righteousness and the wicked priest. Scholars have long debated their identities. But perhaps these names are not just historical puzzles. Perhaps they are archetypes, mirrored in every age, the enlightened soul who carries divine knowledge, and the corrupted power that seeks to silence it. This duality, the tension between revelation and repression, is the very heart of the scrolls' mystique. They were written in secret, hidden in caves, preserved by people who knew that the time would come when their words would be needed again. They weren't just documenting, they were prophesying. And perhaps, just perhaps, they were speaking to us. Because as we unearth these fragments, piece by piece, it becomes clear, this isn't about recovering lost texts. It's about remembering who we are. The scrolls are mirrors, held up to a humanity that has forgotten its light. To peer deeper into the Dead Sea Scrolls is to confront a provocative question, one that unsettles historians and theologians alike. What if the spiritual history we've inherited is not just incomplete, but deliberately edited? The scrolls suggest that entire threads of human understanding, about the divine, about ourselves, and about the cosmos, have been methodically buried beneath layers of institutional doctrine and time-worn tradition. Take, for example, the scroll often referred to as the Genesis Apocryphon. It retells familiar stories from the book of Genesis, of Enoch, Noah, and Abraham, but with startling expansions. In these versions, the patriarchs don't just act under divine guidance, they are visionaries, dreamwalkers, and celestial travelers. Enoch, in particular, is painted as a being with knowledge of heavenly realms, capable of decoding dreams and communing with angels. These aren't just biblical figures, they're initiates of a higher order, custodians of metaphysical wisdom. The implications are enormous. It suggests that the original Hebrew tradition may have held esoteric layers long before such mysticism was associated with Kabbalah or Christian Gnosticism. Then there is the Book of Mysteries, a fragmentary scroll, barely surviving, yet pulsing with hidden depth. It speaks of secrets that only the wise can perceive, of a knowledge passed not through lineage, but through inner awakening. There is a recurring phrase, the mystery that is to come. It implies a concealed truth waiting to be revealed at a specific moment in history, perhaps a moment like now, when global consciousness is stirring, and ancient knowledge is re-emerging from the ruins of modernity. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the scrolls is their emphasis on duality and destiny. Time is not linear in these texts. It unfolds in cycles, epochs of darkness followed by restoration. This cosmology mirrors the beliefs found in Eastern philosophy, the Mayan long count, and even Hermetic thought, that history is a wheel, and that within each turn lies a sacred opportunity for humanity to realign with cosmic law. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, this cycle is dramatized through the battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, a cosmic drama in which every soul plays a part, knowingly or unknowingly. The figure of the teacher of righteousness becomes a central mystery in this drama. He is described as a revelatory leader, unjustly persecuted by a corrupt priesthood, and hidden from the world until a destined time. Some scholars believe he was a historical Essene leader. Others whisper that he was an early prototype of the Messiah, a precursor to Jesus, or even a reincarnated soul carrying ancient wisdom. What's vital here is not just who he was, but what he represented, the eternal archetype of the hidden sage, the awakened one who walks quietly among the blind. Contrast this with the wicked priest, a figure corrupted by power, aligned with worldly authority, who seeks to destroy the teacher's influence. The scrolls describe him in symbolic, almost dreamlike terms, suggesting that he, too, is more than a man. He is the embodiment of the egoic force that resists awakening. The battle between them is not merely political or religious, it is spiritual warfare, manifesting in every generation, in every seeker's soul. Another startling aspect is the portrayal of angelic intervention. The scrolls are filled with references to the sons of heaven, the Watchers, and an entire celestial hierarchy far more detailed than what survives in mainstream scripture. These angelic beings are not distant ornaments of faith, they are participants in the human journey. The Watchers, in particular, appear in fragments tied to the Book of Enoch, where they descend to earth and share forbidden knowledge, astrology, metallurgy, and enchantment. Their story is one of divine rebellion, but also of deep compassion. Some fell not to destroy, but to teach. And for that, they were banished. What does this mean for us? It suggests that humanity has always had access to divine intelligence, not through institutions, but through direct contact. Through dreams. Through intuition. Through silence. And perhaps that is the most unsettling truth of all. That spiritual authority does not belong to the chosen few, but to the awakened many. That revelation is not a historical event, but a living process. In this light, the Dead Sea Scrolls are not ancient relics. They are seeds, planted long ago, waiting for the right moment, and the right minds, to bloom again. What good is ancient knowledge if it remains entombed in scrolls and stone? The true power of the Dead Sea Scrolls is not just in what they reveal about the past, but in how they speak to the present. These fragments, these whispers from across millennia, are invitations, not to believe blindly, but to awaken. To rediscover the sacred technology of the soul. To return to a path of conscious living, mystical perception, and divine remembrance. First, the scrolls challenge us to reconsider our relationship with time. The Essenes lived by a sacred calendar, a solar rhythm that aligned their rituals with celestial movements. Today, We exist in a mechanized time, measured by deadlines, alarms, and artificial hours. But we can reclaim spiritual time by synchronizing our lives with natural cycles. Begin simply. Observe the moon. Mark the solstices and equinoxes. Light a candle at dawn. These small rituals attune your consciousness to the living cosmos. As the Essenes believed, when you align with divine timing, you open gateways within. Second, the scrolls urge purification, not in the moralistic sense, but as a spiritual discipline. The community rule outlines practices of fasting, silence, and contemplation. While their lives were austere, the essence was clarity. Today, we carry too much noise, mental clutter, emotional residue, digital addiction. To walk the path of the ancient seekers, we must make room for the sacred. Try a day of intentional silence. Unplug. Journal your thoughts. Fast from excess, whether food, media, or speech, and notice what rises from the depths of your being. As the scrolls suggest, the vessel must be still before it can be filled with light. A key teaching buried in the scrolls is the idea of inner war, the battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness within the soul. This is not metaphor alone. It is psychological and energetic truth. The light is your higher self, your divine nature. The darkness is fear, ego, and illusion. Bringing this into daily practice means becoming a vigilant guardian of your inner state. Begin your morning with a declaration of alignment. Today, I walk with the light. Throughout the day, pause and observe. Are you acting from love or fear? Clarity or confusion? This awareness alone begins to shift your frequency. Meditation also becomes a bridge between the scroll's wisdom and modern practice. The Essenes may not have called it meditation, but their long periods of silence, prayer, and contemplation mirror the same inner technology. Try this: sit in stillness, breathe deeply, and visualize a scroll unraveling before you, its ancient letters glowing with light. Ask inwardly, what must I remember? Then listen. Not with ears, but with soul. Sometimes, wisdom emerges not in words, but in impressions, images, or sensations. This is how the ancients received revelation, not as commandments, but as communion. And then there is community. The Essenes did not walk the path alone. They formed sacred circles, bound not by dogma but by shared vision. In a world increasingly fragmented, consider creating or joining a circle of seekers. Not a place of preaching, but of practice. Gather under the stars. Share dreams. Study forgotten texts. Hold silence together. In such spaces, the wisdom of the scrolls is no longer historical, it becomes living memory. Above all, remember this: the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden because their truths could not be entrusted to an unready world. But now, as consciousness rises, those truths are finding their way into open hearts. The path of the mystic is not in memorizing verses, it is in embodying revelation. In living as if the divine spark is not distant, but dwelling within you, guiding you, illuminating you, remembering itself through you. Because it is. There is something sacred in fragments. A whisper carries more weight than a shout when it's born from silence. The Dead Sea Scrolls, scattered and buried in desert caves for over 2,000 years, are more than archaeological treasures. they are spiritual echoes, calling out across time to those with ears to hear and hearts ready to remember. We have journeyed through their mysteries, from coded prophecies to celestial calendars, from hidden teachers to the angelic realms. But perhaps the most profound revelation is this: the scrolls were never just about the past. They are a map for the present, a blueprint for awakening, a mirror in which we can glimpse our forgotten divinity. They remind us that history is not a straight line but a spiral. What was once hidden returns in a higher form. Truth, when buried, does not die, it waits. And now, as the world trembles under the weight of disillusionment and distraction, these ancient voices rise again, not to repeat old dogmas, but to invite a deeper seeing. You, the seeker, are part of this unveiling. When you light a candle in solitude, when you listen for the still voice within, when you align your actions with your higher nature, you are activating the very essence the Essenes lived for. You are continuing a lineage not of blood, but of light. The sons and daughters of the light were never just a sect, they were a symbol of humanity's capacity to remember, to return, to reawaken. So let the scrolls be more than words to you. Let them be living scrolls, etched in your daily choices, in your moments of silence, in your gaze toward the stars. Let them teach you not just what was, but what is, and what can be. Because the sacred was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to look beneath the surface. Now, the question is yours to carry. What will you do with the light that has been returned to you?